Hello guys, here is Adriana Guerrero again. This is my video about this activity number 2 from a video called Linguistic Baggage from Moti. And it's basically we need to explain one important point that Moti made in that video about language or learning another language. So first of all, I want to start explaining that I found Moti's video very interesting. It was very straightforward, and the way that Moti was explaining this transfer in the language was very clear. So one important point that I'm taking away from that video is the way that Moti explained that when we are learning a second language, we usually or often apply the grammatical structures for our L1, first language, into the second language, or L2. And that process is known as linguistic transfer or transfer. That process is very unique and different according to other languages. So, for example, Mati in the video, he explained that a person that has as a Japanese or maybe German or Spanish as their first languages is very unique the way that they transfer those grammatical structures into that new language. And in this case, if we were using English and as an example. So is we're gonna see that in their linguistic domains as phonology, syntaxis, and semantics, there is a very unique way that those grammatical structures are being applied, right? And that impacts the way that the learners understand and use that second language. So it's very different the way that I'm applying, like since I'm a Spanish native speaker, the way that I'm applying the use of those specific grammatical phonology or grammatical structures into English coming from Spanish that if I would be a Japanese speaker and I'm trying to apply that phonological structures into English. So this is my takeaway, and this is my most important point: the way that we are using or the way that we transfer those linguistic structures or grammatical structures from L1 to L2. So then it's important that we understand how transfer is different from what some people refer to as interference. So we can understand that interference is the negative transfer. So that happens when we find differences between two language structures. So from L1 to L2, and those differences lead to systematic errors. That means that sometimes we are trying to apply the knowledge that we have, not the knowledge, well, the grammatical structures that we have in an L1 into those that we are learning in our L2. And it's impossible. Like it's not possible for us to use exactly the same because that L2 has its very own grammatical structures. I really like one example that Mati used on the video. He said like when we are learning a second language is that if we picture it as a color, so all the colors that we have in an L1 are going to be are going to be coloring everything in our second language. So it's impossible for us to change a color because we're just carrying that linguistic baggage into our L2. And I think that's the best and the best example is very clear because even that sometimes we are trying to pull from our L2, in my case, in Spanish, I'm trying to understand, for example, the order of adjectives. So in Spanish, we use adjective in that specific order. And in Spanish, we also have a different order that is not the same in Spanish. So sometimes when I'm trying to explain or describe something in English, it's so hard for me because I'm trying to use the same system that I use in Spanish. And it's so hard for me because I'm facing an interference when I'm trying to explain and describe some adjectives in English. because there is not the same way that that we do it in English. So that's the sample that I'm using, and I think is very good and is very clear to really see that that interference when we are learning a second language. And here's my reference, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video. Bye.